Hi, I'm Bob McCoskrie. How much do you trust the media? And does the question and the answer to that question really matter? Well, my answer would be yes, it matters absolutely. As our culture debates crucial issues that affect families, issues such as the definition and purpose of marriage, the role of parents, sexuality and gender ideology, critical race theory, drugs, conversion therapy, surrogacy, child abuse, prostitution, and many others, we need the public to hear the full debate. We need to be educated on both sides of the argument. Now, as I told you before, I used to be in the debating team at school, and as first speaker, I had to listen to the opposing argument so that when I came to respond, I could effectively rebut it. And that's what public debate is, isn't it? A battle of ideas. May the best argument win. May truth and common sense win. And these days, may biology win. And we often look to our media to find that information, to hear the opposing arguments. We watch the news to hear what has happened, what are the big issues and the arguments for and against. We hear opposing views and then make our own judgment. But what if we don't get to hear both sides? What if we only get told what the legacy media, those big media outlets that we've listened to for so long, want to tell us? What if they hide or censor some of the information? We'll make wrong decisions for our families. Our communities will suffer. Our culture will be weaker for it. So yeah, trusting the media is crucial. But it feels like we no longer watch or read or listen to the media to get the facts. We get told how we should be thinking and what our views should be. The New Zealand Media Council regulates the media industry and sets the standards, and the first standard they expect of those in the industry is accuracy, fairness and balance. The problem is, less and less of us trust the media. We don't think they're accurate, fair or balanced. The last time I talked about this was just recently, but there's a new report from AUT's Research Centre for Journalism, Media and Democracy. AUT is the Auckland University of Technology. And let me take you on a brief tour through this report. Now, one thing I did find interesting is that the report is supposed to reflect what the people think. They're reporting on an online national survey done by a research company. But before they report what the people think, they immediately push their own narrative. The exact problem that they're highlighting in the report. It's actually quite amusing. For example, they say that since their last report, New Zealanders have been bombarded with misinformation and have faced conspiracy theories. But here's the question. Please define misinformation. Who defines misinformation? And then the report says, the Disinformation Project found that conspiracy theories about COVID-19 had escalated since the Delta virus entered the country in August 2021. The report says the most recent COVID-19 outbreak and the vaccine are strong symbols that are being used to push various far-right and conservative views. Those pesky conservatives. In fact, let me just read a bit more of the Disinformation Project report. Because the media regularly report this group, and the media seem to really love the term disinformation and misinformation at the moment. The Disinformation Project says, the most recent COVID-19 outbreak and the vaccine are highly visible, potent symbols used to push various far-right and conservative ideologies around issues such as free speech, faith, Christian evangelical or Pentecostal, abortion, euthanasia, cannabis law reform, families and family structure, LGBTQIA+ rights, including conversion therapy, immigration, race and gender. Whew, what a shocking list, eh? Apparently advocating these issues is all about disinformation. Opposing the government's agenda is misinformation. The AUT report notes that these anti-government messages are often being imported alongside white supremacist ideologies. Well, as we've already established, a lot of anti-government sentiment is actually amongst non-white groups. But hey, under critical race theory, white people are the cause of every problem, apparently. Now, before we look at trust in the New Zealand media by Kiwis, how do the overseas media fare? And this is referred to in the AUT report. The Edelman Trust Barometer 2022, which looks at trust levels in both governments and the media, report that globally trust in media declined in 2022, with just 50% trusting their media. And the CEO of Edelman says that governments and media are doing a dangerous tango of short-term mutual advantage with exaggeration and division to gain clicks and votes, and that they need to get back to a business model that replaces outrage with sobriety, clickbait with calm authority. The barometer shows 67% of people believe journalists are lying to them. Concerns for fake news were at an all-time high, 76% of people worrying about false information. The report argues media are feeding a cycle of division and disinformation for votes and clicks, with 46% of people distrusting journalists. Hang on, I thought it was those pesky conservatives who are pro-family, pro-marriage, pro-life and anti-drugs who should get all the blame for misinformation. But this report is saying it's the media feeding a cycle of division and disinformation for votes and clicks. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Another international survey that the AUT report refers to is the Reuters Digital News Report 2021, which observes that in 2021, trust in news actually grew by 6% compared to 2020, with 44% of people surveyed trusting most of the news most of the time. So it's still less than half, but an improvement. And their survey was over 46 countries. So trust in the media is very low worldwide. Around half or less trust the media, although interestingly, the Reuters report showed some improvement in trust. So let's look at the latest measure of the views of Kiwis. In 2022, 45% of New Zealanders trusted news in general, dropping from 48% in 2021 and 53% in 2020. So that's an 8% drop in just 2 years. So less than half of us trust the news in general, and that trust continues to drop. But for news that people actually use, which you would expect to be sites that they trust a little more than sites they don't use, it declined even more than the general trust. 10% decline in the past 3 years. In 2022, 52% of New Zealanders trusted news they consume themselves, chose themselves, compared to 55% in 2021 and 62% in 2020. So trust in New Zealand news has decreased 8 to 10%. But as we saw when compared internationally, news has gained slightly in trust internationally. Here's where we stand internationally for trust levels. Yep, that's New Zealand media out the right-hand side. Not doing too well, eh? The AUT report then looks at individual outlets, and you'll see that Radio New Zealand, TVNZ and News Hub have highest trust, although still all 7 out of 10 or less. But note the decrease over the last 2 years, an 11 to 13% decrease over the last 2 years. The New Zealand Herald, Stuff and News Talk ZB are further down the trust list. All three are 5.7 out of 10 for trust, and they've also lost trust in the last 2 years, although ZB has stayed about the same. Newsroom has also had a big drop. Actually, I was amused to see how low in trust the left-wing spin-off site is, right near the bottom, 5.2. That's just a pass, and well deserved. Please don't forward me articles from that site. The report then talks about concerns related to journalism and news processes, and respondents are asked whether they were concerned about poor journalism. Stories with spin or twisted facts, stories made up for political or commercial reasons, or fake news. Now, similar to last year, 91% of respondents were concerned about poor journalism. However, the proportion of those who were extremely concerned increased from 23 to 27%. Approximately 92% of respondents were concerned about stories where facts are spun or twisted to push a particular agenda, down slightly from 94%. However, those extremely concerned rose from 30 to 36% at the same time, showing the level of those who have a high level of concern is rising. And finally, when asked about the neutrality of news reporting on social and political issues, 2 out of 3, 62% of those responding said that journalists should be neutral on every issue they report on. Although approximately 26% believe that it does not make sense to be neutral on some issues. Really? Well, maybe a clear opinion piece, but not a news report. It's encouraging that almost 2 out of 3 of us believe that journalists should be neutral. And the report says that those who believe that controversial voices should be heard said that in a democratic society, all voices should be heard, especially when the issue is important to the people they represent. Exactly. As I said when we spoke about this previously, I would like to be able to trust the media. But it's time the mainstream media, the legacy media, worked harder to ensure their coverage is consistent with the New Zealand Media Council's first principle of accuracy, fairness and balance. Perhaps the analyses that we have done of the media recently have contributed to this disturbing trend of declining trust. As you know, after the cannabis referendum in 2020, we commissioned an analysis of the media coverage, and we found a strong bias to the yes position by the legacy media. 33% of all articles were entirely yes biased versus 6%, just 6% being entirely no biased. 51% of all op-eds were yes biased, while only 27% presented a no position. Advocates promoting the yes position were quoted twice as often as no advocates. And more recently, there's been a massive debate on another controversial bill, the conversion therapy bill. But again, an in-depth analysis of the media coverage of this bill found a similar problem to the cannabis referendum coverage. Support for the law received a heavily biased share of the media coverage. Overall, 78% of all news coverage across 4 measures surveyed was supportive. 40% of all articles were entirely supportive, versus just 1 article that was entirely opposed. 66% of all op-eds were yes biased, only 12% were no biased. The overall bias in the media coverage is a deeply concerning observation about the way the mainstream media covered this important social debate and other social debates. The transgender debate is another issue where the media are shutting down almost any dissension to the ideology. As we said with the cannabis referendum, the media should be reporting the full debate, not leading it, and then leave and allow the public to come to their own conclusion based on all the information. We should be able to trust the mainstream media to participate in social debate in a non-partisan way. And unfortunately, they seem to push the government narrative, especially on these controversial social and moral issues. And then this just reinforces the claim that the legacy media is state-sponsored media. Now, that may not be true, but this type of biased coverage does nothing to help their cause, and it affects our trust. What's the saying? Once bitten, twice shy? Or as Norwegian politician Ivan Reiten said, credibility takes years to build, but a few hours to destroy. Or in the case of the media, a few biased stories or biased coverage of an issue to destroy. We have some crucial family issues to debate in our culture. The media should report the debate, not indoctrinate us with their worldview. We deserve better from the New Zealand media.